Maya Rodriguez walked through the school halls with her head down, clutching her worn camouflage backpack tight against her chest. The faded military green jacket she wore every day had become like armor to her, even though it seemed to make her a bigger target for the cruel words that followed her wherever she went. "Look, it's Army Girl again," Jessica Chen whispered loudly to her friends near the lockers. "Does she think she's going to war or something?" The group of popular girls giggled as Maya passed by, their designer clothes and perfectly styled hair a sharp contrast to Maya's simple appearance. Her long black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her clothes were clean but clearly not expensive. The camouflage pattern on her jacket was the only thing that made her stand out, and unfortunately, it made her stand out in all the wrong ways. Maya pretended not to hear them, just like she pretended not to hear the comments every morning when she got off the school bus. Lincoln High School had always been divided into clear groups. There were the athletes, the popular kids, the smart kids, and the arts students. Maya didn't really fit into any of these groups, which left her floating somewhere in the middle, mostly invisible except when someone wanted to make fun of her unusual clothing choice. "Why do you always wear that ugly jacket?" Tyler Morrison had asked her just last week during lunch. He was the quarterback of the football team, tall and confident, with the kind of smile that made most girls in school blush. But when he looked at Maya, there was no kindness in his eyes. "It's not Halloween, you know." His friends had laughed, and Maya had simply picked up her lunch tray and moved to an empty table in the corner of the cafeteria. She ate her sandwich in silence while conversations and laughter filled the air around her. The truth was, she loved that jacket more than anything else she owned, but she couldn't explain why to people who wouldn't understand. The jacket had been a gift, and it meant everything to her. But every time she tried to speak up for herself, the words got stuck in her throat. Maya had never been good at confrontation. She was more comfortable being quiet, observing and staying out of trouble. Her mother had always taught her to be respectful and to avoid unnecessary drama. "Just ignore them, mija," her mother, Carmen, would say when Maya came home looking sad. "People don't understand what they haven't experienced. Your father would be proud of how strong you are." But Maya didn't feel strong. She felt small and alone, especially when she sat in classes where group projects meant being the last person picked, or when she ate lunch by herself while everyone else chatted excitedly with their friends. The only time she felt truly comfortable was in her history class, where Mr. Patterson talked about different wars and the brave people who fought in them. Maya always paid close attention during these lessons, taking detailed notes that impressed her teacher. "Maya has a real understanding of military history," Mr. Patterson had told her mother during parent-teacher conferences. "She asks thoughtful questions and seems to have a personal connection to the subject matter." The bullying had gotten worse over the past few months. What started as occasional comments had turned into daily harassment. Students would make explosion sounds when she walked by, pretend to march in formation, or salute her mockingly in the hallways. Some of the meaner kids had started calling her Sergeant Nobody or Private Weird. Maya tried different strategies to deal with it. She tried leaving her jacket in her locker and wearing regular clothes, but she felt naked and uncomfortable without it. She tried taking different routes through the school, but somehow the comments always found her. She even considered asking her mother to transfer her to a different school, but Carmen was working 2 jobs to make ends meet, and Maya knew that changing schools would create additional complications they couldn't afford. The worst incident had happened just 2 weeks ago during gym class. Maya was good at sports, better than many of her classmates, but she was never picked for teams because of her reputation as the weird, quiet girl. During a volleyball game, she had made several good plays that helped her team win. Instead of celebrating with her, her teammates had joked that her military training must have paid off. "Maybe she learned that in boot camp," one girl had said. "Or maybe her dad is a drill sergeant," another added. Maya had felt her chest tighten. They were making jokes, but they had no idea how close to home their words hit. She had run to the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes before pulling herself together and returning to class. The social media harassment was almost worse than the face-to-face bullying. Someone had created a fake Instagram account called Camo Girl Cringe and posted photos of Maya that they took secretly at school. The posts had captions like, "When you order army surplus instead of real clothes," and "Trying too hard to be different." Maya had blocked the account, but screenshots of the posts were shared around school, making her feel exposed and humiliated. Her grades were starting to suffer because she spent so much energy trying to avoid confrontation that she couldn't focus on her schoolwork. Math class was particularly difficult because Tyler and his friends sat behind her, making quiet comments that only she could hear. Her English teacher, Mrs. Walker, had noticed the change in her performance and had asked if everything was okay at home. "I'm fine," Maya had lied, not wanting to create more problems for her mother. But she wasn't fine. She was tired of being afraid to speak in class, tired of eating lunch alone, tired of dreading school every morning. Most of all, she was tired of people making assumptions about her without knowing anything about her life or her family. The jacket represented something important to her, something sacred, but she couldn't find the courage to explain what it really meant. Maya's mother worked at a local diner during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. She was always tired, but she never complained. Carmen had immigrated to the United States 15 years ago, and she was proud of the life she had built for herself and her daughter. She spoke with a slight accent that some of Maya's classmates made fun of when they heard her at school events. "Education is the most important thing," Carmen always said. "No one can take your knowledge away from you." Maya knew her mother was right, but it was hard to focus on learning when she spent most of her time at school trying to disappear. She had developed a routine of arriving just before the bell rang and leaving immediately when classes ended. She avoided school events, sports games, and social activities. Her world had become very small, limited to her classes, her part-time job at the local library, and her quiet evenings at home with her mother. The library job was the one place where Maya felt truly comfortable. Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, appreciated Maya's quiet nature and attention to detail. Maya spent her afternoons after school organizing books, helping younger children with homework, and maintaining the computer systems. The library was peaceful, and most of the students who came there were focused on studying rather than social drama. "You have a gift for helping people," Mrs. Henderson had told her just last month. "You're patient and kind, and you explain things clearly. Have you ever thought about becoming a teacher?" Maya had smiled at the compliment, but she couldn't imagine standing in front of a classroom full of students who might judge her the same way her current classmates did. She preferred working behind the scenes, helping people in quiet ways that didn't draw attention to herself. As November arrived and the weather grew colder, Maya continued to wear her camouflage jacket every day. It was warm and practical, and despite all the negative attention it brought her, she couldn't bring herself to leave it at home. The jacket was like a connection to something bigger than her small world at Lincoln High School. When she wore it, she felt like she was carrying a piece of someone important with her, someone who would want her to be brave even when being brave felt impossible. The morning of November 11th started like any other day for Maya, but there was something different in the air. Veterans Day had always been special in the Rodriguez household, though Maya never talked about it at school. She had woken up early to help her mother prepare for the busy day ahead at the diner, where they always served free meals to veterans and their families. "Make sure you remember what today represents, mija," Carmen had said, adjusting Maya's jacket collar with gentle hands. "Your father would want you to hold your head high, especially today." But holding her head high felt impossible when Maya walked into school and immediately heard snickering from a group of students near the entrance. Someone had taped a handmade sign to her locker that read, "Maya's Military Fantasy Land," with crude drawings of helicopters and tanks. Her face burned with embarrassment as she quickly tore it down, crumpling the paper in her trembling hands. "Oh, look who's having a meltdown over her Army games," said Madison Pierce, the student council president, who seemed to take particular pleasure in Maya's humiliation. Madison had perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive clothes that screamed wealth and privilege. She had never spoken to Maya directly before. But today she seemed determined to make her presence known. A small crowd was gathering, phones appearing as students sensed drama. Maya knew that anything that happened now would be recorded and shared across social media within minutes. She wanted to run, to hide in the library until the attention died down, but something inside her felt different today. Maybe it was the significance of the date, or maybe she was finally tired of being afraid. "It's not a game," Maya said quietly, her voice barely audible above the noise in the hallway. "What did you say?" Madison stepped closer, her eyes bright with the possibility of a confrontation. "Did the little soldier girl finally find her voice?" Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She thought about her father's letters, the ones she kept hidden in her bedroom drawer, written in his careful handwriting during long nights in Afghanistan. She thought about the last video call they had shared, where he had looked tired but proud, telling her about the local children he and his unit were helping to get clean water. "I said it's not a game," Maya repeated, this time loud enough for everyone to hear. "This jacket belongs to someone who actually served our country." Madison rolled her eyes dramatically. "Sure it does. Let me guess. Your imaginary boyfriend is in the Army? Or maybe you bought it at a thrift store and made up some story to get attention?" The crowd around them grew larger, and Maya could hear whispers and giggles. Someone called out, "Fight! Fight!" from the back of the group, though Maya had no intention of physical confrontation. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "My father is deployed in Afghanistan," Maya said, her voice stronger now despite the tremor in her hands. "This jacket is his. He sent it to me because he wanted me to have something that reminded me of him every day." The laughter died down slightly, but Madison wasn't finished. She had an audience now, and she seemed determined to maintain her position as the alpha in this situation. "Right. And I suppose he's some big war hero, too? Come on, Maya. Everyone knows you make up stories to seem interesting. Your mom works at that greasy diner downtown. If your dad was really in the military, don't you think you'd have better clothes than that old jacket?" Maya felt tears stinging her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and scrolled through her photos until she found what she was looking for. It was a picture from 6 months ago, showing a tall man in full military uniform standing next to a convoy of vehicles. His name tape read Rodriguez, and his rank insignia showed he was a staff sergeant. In the photo, he was smiling and giving a thumbs up, dust and mountains visible in the background. "Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez, United States Army," Maya said, holding the phone up so the crowd could see. "He's been deployed for 8 months, and he won't be home until next spring. This jacket was his during his first deployment 5 years ago, before I was old enough to understand what it meant." The hallway fell quiet. Some students moved closer to get a better look at the photo, while others began to step back, suddenly uncomfortable with the direction the confrontation had taken. Madison's confident smirk faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Anyone can find a picture online," she said, though her voice lacked its previous conviction. "That doesn't prove anything." Maya scrolled to another photo, this one showing her father in civilian clothes at her 8th grade graduation ceremony. He was wearing his dress uniform and beaming with pride as he stood next to Maya, who was holding her diploma. The family resemblance was unmistakable. "This is from 2 years ago, before his current deployment," Maya said. "And this one is from when he came to career day at my middle school and talked about military engineering." She showed another photo of her father in front of a classroom. pointing to a presentation about bridge building and infrastructure repair in combat zones. Several students in the current crowd recognized the classroom from their own middle school years. Mr. Patterson, the history teacher, had been walking past when he noticed the commotion. He stopped and moved through the crowd, his expression serious as he assessed the situation. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice carrying the authority that came from 20 years of managing teenage drama. "Maya was just showing us pictures of her imaginary army dad," Madison said, but her tone was less confident now. Mr. Patterson looked at Maya's phone and his expression changed completely. His own father had served in Vietnam, and he recognized the authentic details in the photos that most teenagers would miss. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," he said slowly, studying the image. "I remember when you did your family history project last year, Maya. Your father has served multiple deployments, hasn't he?" Maya nodded, grateful for adult support, but still feeling exposed and vulnerable. "This is his third deployment. The first two were shorter, but this one is 15 months. 15 months away from his family," Mr. Patterson said, looking pointedly at the students gathered around them. "That's a significant sacrifice. Maya, your father is serving with the 82nd Airborne Division, correct?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied, surprised that her teacher remembered details from her project. The crowd was dispersing now, students suddenly finding other places to be as the reality of the situation sank in. Madison stood her ground for a few more seconds, but even she seemed to realize that she had crossed a line. "Whatever," she muttered, turning away. "It's still weird to wear army clothes to school every day." But her words lacked their earlier venom, and most of the students were no longer paying attention to her. Maya tucked her phone back into her pocket and adjusted her backpack, feeling emotionally drained from the confrontation. "Maya," Mr. Patterson said gently, "would you mind staying after class today? I'd like to talk with you about something." Maya nodded, though she worried about what the conversation might involve. She had never been in trouble at school, and she hoped that standing up for herself wouldn't somehow backfire. The rest of the morning passed in a strange haze. Word had spread quickly about the hallway confrontation, and Maya noticed students looking at her differently. Some seemed curious, others appeared sympathetic, and a few looked embarrassed about their previous behavior. Tyler and his friends were notably quieter during math class, though they still whispered among themselves. During lunch, something unprecedented happened. Sarah Kim, a quiet girl from Maya's chemistry class, approached her table with her lunch tray. "Mind if I sit here?" Sarah asked. "I wanted to tell you that my cousin is deployed in Germany right now, and I think it's cool that you honor your dad by wearing his jacket." Maya was so surprised that she almost choked on her sandwich. "Really?" "Yeah," Sarah said, settling into the chair across from Maya. "My family sends care packages every month. It's hard having someone you love so far away." For the first time in months, Maya didn't eat lunch alone. Sarah shared stories about her cousin's letters and photos from Europe, while Maya talked about her father's work building infrastructure in rural Afghan villages. It felt strange but wonderful to finally talk openly about her family's military connection. When Maya arrived at Mr. Patterson's classroom after school, she found him grading papers at his desk. The walls were covered with historical posters and maps, including a large display showing current military operations around the world. "Have a seat, Maya," he said, gesturing to a chair next to his desk. "I wanted to talk with you about what happened this morning and about something else that might interest you." Maya sat down nervously, unsure of what to expect. "First, I want you to know that you handled that situation with more grace and courage than most adults would have shown," Mr. Patterson said. "It takes real strength to stand up for your family and yourself like that." "It didn't feel brave," Maya admitted. "I was terrified." "That's exactly what makes it brave," he replied. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite being afraid. Your father would be proud of how you represented your family today." Mr. Patterson pulled out a folder from his desk drawer and opened it to reveal several photographs and documents. "I've been working on a special project for Veterans Day," he continued. "The school district is organizing a ceremony on Friday to honor local military families, and I've been trying to identify students who have parents or siblings currently serving. Your name came up during my research." Maya's eyes widened as she looked at the materials in the folder. There were official military newsletters, photos from deployment ceremonies, and letters from family members of deployed soldiers. "The ceremony will include a special recognition segment for Gold Star families and families with currently deployed service members," Mr. Patterson explained. "I was hoping you might consider participating. It would involve reading a short statement about your father's service and what it means to your family." Maya felt her stomach flip. The idea of standing in front of a crowd and speaking publicly terrified her. But she also felt a spark of something else. Pride, maybe, or the possibility of finally sharing her father's story in a positive way. "I don't know if I can do that," she said honestly. "I'm not good at speaking in front of people." "You don't have to decide right now," Mr. Patterson said. "But I want you to know that your father's service matters, and so does your family's sacrifice. People should hear about families like yours, especially young people who might not understand what military service really means." As Maya walked home that afternoon, she felt different than she had in months. The confrontation with Madison had been difficult, but it had also been liberating in a way she hadn't expected. For the first time, she had spoken openly about her father and her family's military connection, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, some people had responded with respect and understanding. But she also knew that the attention would bring new challenges. Not everyone would be as accepting as Sarah or Mr. Patterson. And she still had to face the daily reality of being different in a school where conformity was often valued above authenticity. That evening, Maya sat at her computer and opened her email to write to her father. She told him about Veterans Day, about the confrontation at school, and about Mr. Patterson's invitation to participate in the ceremony. As she typed, she could almost hear his voice encouraging her to be brave, to stand up for what mattered, and to never be ashamed of who she was or where she came from. She didn't know yet what she would decide about the ceremony, but for the first time in months, Maya felt like she had choices instead of just reactions. The camouflage jacket hanging on her chair seemed to represent not just her father's service, but also her own growing courage to face whatever came next. Friday morning arrived with an unusual buzz of excitement at Lincoln High School. The Veterans Day ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m., and students had been talking about it all week. Maya had finally decided to participate after discussing it with her mother, who had tears in her eyes when Maya told her about Mr. Patterson's invitation. "Your father would be so proud, Mija," Carmen had said, holding Maya close. "He always said that sharing our stories helps people understand each other better." Maya wore her father's jacket with extra pride that morning, and she noticed that the usual comments and stares had mostly stopped. Word about her confrontation with Madison had spread throughout the school, and while not everyone was suddenly friendly, the outright mockery had decreased significantly. During first period, Maya was surprised to find a note in her locker from Tyler Morrison, the quarterback who had been one of her main tormentors. "Maya," the note read, "I wanted to apologize for the stupid things I said about your jacket. My uncle served in Iraq and I should have known better. Good luck with the ceremony today. Tyler." Maya stared at the note in amazement. She had never expected an apology from Tyler, and the gesture made her realize how much things had changed in just a few days. As she walked to her first class, she felt nervous about the ceremony, but also excited to honor her father in front of her school community. The morning classes passed quickly, and by lunchtime, Maya could see preparations for the ceremony happening on the football field. A small stage had been set up at the 50-yard line. with chairs arranged in rows for the audience. American flags flanked the stage, and a large banner reading, "Honoring Our Heroes," stretched across the back. Maya found herself sitting with Sarah Kim and two other students who had gradually joined their lunch table over the past few days. The group included Marcus Thompson, whose older brother was serving in the Navy, and Elena Vasquez, whose grandfather was a Vietnam veteran. For the first time since starting high school, Maya felt like she belonged somewhere. "Are you nervous about speaking today?" Sarah asked, noticing Maya's quieter-than-usual demeanor. "Terrified," Maya admitted with a small laugh, "but also excited. I've never talked publicly about my dad's deployment before." "You'll do great," Elena said supportively. "My grandfather always says that speaking from the heart is the most powerful kind of speech." As the lunch period ended, Mr. Patterson found Maya in the cafeteria and pulled her aside. "I have some exciting news," he said, barely able to contain his enthusiasm. "I received a call this morning from the base where your father is stationed. They're arranging something very special for today's ceremony, but I can't tell you what it is. It's going to be a surprise." Maya felt a mixture of curiosity and anxiety. "Is my dad okay? Did something happen?" "He's absolutely fine," Mr. Patterson assured her quickly. "This is a good surprise, I promise. Just trust me and be ready for something amazing." The afternoon classes seemed to drag on forever, as Maya wondered what the surprise could be. She ran through various possibilities in her mind, but nothing seemed to make sense. How could her father, who was thousands of miles away in Afghanistan, be part of a ceremony at her high school? Finally, at 1:30 p.m., students began filing out to the football field for the ceremony. Maya felt her heart racing as she made her way to the staging area behind the bleachers where Mr. Patterson was coordinating with other participants. There were several other students with military family connections, as well as local veterans who would be speaking about their service. "Maya, you'll be speaking fourth in the program," Mr. Patterson explained, handing her a small microphone. "Just remember to speak clearly and from the heart. The whole school will be listening, but focus on sharing your father's story and what his service means to you." Maya nodded, trying to calm her nerves as she reviewed the short speech she had prepared. She had written about her father's work building schools and infrastructure in Afghanistan, about the sacrifices military families make, and about the pride she felt wearing his jacket every day. The ceremony began with the school band playing the national anthem, followed by a presentation of colors by the local VFW post. Principal Williams spoke about the importance of honoring veterans and active duty service members, while emphasizing the sacrifices made by military families. When Maya's turn came, she walked to the microphone on legs that felt like jelly. The entire school was seated in the bleachers, along with parents and community members who had come to attend the ceremony. Maya could see her mother in the crowd, beaming with pride, despite having to miss work to be there. "Good afternoon," Maya began, her voice slightly shaky. "My name is Maya Rodriguez, and I'm here today to talk about my father, Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez of the United States Army." As she spoke, Maya's confidence grew. She described her father's third deployment, his work with engineers building infrastructure in rural areas, and the letters he sent describing the Afghan children who were getting access to clean water and education because of projects like his. "When people see me wearing this camouflage jacket," Maya continued, gesturing to her father's uniform top, "some of them think it's strange or that I'm trying to get attention. But this jacket represents something sacred to my family. It represents service, sacrifice, and love for our country. It represents the man who taught me to be brave, to stand up for what's right, and to never forget that freedom isn't free." Maya paused, looking out at the sea of faces in the bleachers. Many students were listening intently, including Madison Pierce, who looked uncomfortable but attentive. "My father has been deployed for 8 months, and he won't be home until next spring," Maya continued. That means he's missed my birthday, school events, and countless dinners around our kitchen table. But he serves because he believes in protecting the freedoms that allow us to gather here today, to get an education, and to pursue our dreams. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Military families serve too, Maya said, her voice growing stronger. We sacrifice time with our loved ones. We worry every day about their safety, and we carry their mission in our hearts even when they're thousands of miles away. When I wear this jacket, I'm honored to represent not just my father, but all the service members who put their lives on the line for our country. As Maya concluded her speech, the audience erupted in applause. She could see tears in many eyes, including those of students who had previously mocked her. Principal Williams stepped forward to thank her, but before he could speak, a distant rumbling sound filled the air. Everyone looked up as the sound grew louder, and suddenly a collective gasp rose from the crowd. A military Black Hawk helicopter was approaching the football field, flying low and steady. The aircraft's rotors created a thunderous noise that made conversation impossible as it circled the field once before beginning to descend. Maya stood frozen at the microphone, not understanding what was happening. The helicopter touched down on the opposite end of the football field, its rotors still spinning as figures in military uniforms began emerging from the aircraft. Mr. Patterson appeared at Maya's side, grinning broadly as he pointed toward the helicopter. "Maya, I think someone wanted to be here for your speech." Maya's eyes widened in disbelief as she recognized one of the figures walking across the field. Even from a distance, even in full combat gear, she would know that confident stride anywhere. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice lost in the noise of the helicopter. Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez walked purposefully across the football field, flanked by two other soldiers. He had flown nearly 7,000 miles in the past 48 hours, coordinating with military transport and the school district to make this surprise possible. When he had received Mr. Patterson's letter describing Maya's situation and her participation in the ceremony, he had moved heaven and earth to be granted emergency leave to attend. Maya dropped the microphone and ran toward her father, her careful composure completely forgotten. The entire crowd rose to their feet as father and daughter met at the 30-yard line, embracing in a hug that seemed to last forever while the helicopter's rotors slowly wound down. "I'm so proud of you, mija," Miguel said, his voice thick with emotion as he held his daughter tight. "Mr. Patterson told me what you've been going through and how brave you've been. I had to be here to see you honor our family." Maya was crying too hard to speak coherently, but she managed to choke out, "I missed you so much, Dad. I wore your jacket every day." "I know you did," Miguel replied, pulling back to look at his daughter's face. "And now I understand why it meant so much to you. You've been carrying our family's honor with you every single day." The crowd remained standing, many people wiping away tears as they witnessed the reunion. Principal Williams approached the father and daughter, shaking Miguel's hand and thanking him for his service. "Sergeant Rodriguez, we're honored to have you here," the principal said. "Your daughter gave a beautiful speech about your family's sacrifice." Miguel looked out at the sea of faces in the bleachers, many of them the same students who had tormented his daughter for months. When he spoke, his voice carried across the field without need for amplification. "I want to thank Lincoln High School for honoring veterans and military families today," he said. "But I also want to thank my daughter Maya for being braver than any soldier I've ever served with. She has represented our family with dignity and courage, even when it wasn't easy." He paused, looking directly at the student section. "This uniform and the jacket my daughter wears aren't costumes or fashion statements. They represent a commitment to serve something bigger than ourselves." Maya understood that long before today, and I hope that everyone here can understand it now. The applause that followed was thunderous and sustained. Students were on their feet, many of them crying, as they finally understood the full weight of what Maya had been carrying with her every day. After the ceremony concluded, something remarkable happened. Students approached Maya and her father in a steady stream, offering thanks, apologies, and expressions of support. Tyler Morrison was among the first to approach, shaking Miguel's hand and apologizing directly to Maya for his previous behavior. "I was ignorant and cruel," Tyler said, his usual confidence replaced by genuine remorse. "I'm sorry for making school harder for you when you were already dealing with so much." Madison Pierce approached hesitantly, her earlier arrogance completely gone. "Maya, I owe you a huge apology," she said, tears in her eyes. "I said horrible things without knowing anything about your life or your family. Your father is a hero, and you're braver than I'll ever be." Maya found herself forgiving classmates she never expected apologies from, while her father watched with pride as his daughter handled the attention with grace and maturity. The next Monday, Maya walked through the halls of Lincoln High School wearing her father's jacket, but everything was different. Students smiled and waved, several asking about her father's deployment and thanking her for sharing her family's story. The Camo Girl Cringe Instagram account had been deleted, replaced by posts supporting military families and veterans. Maya still ate lunch with Sarah, Marcus, and Elena, but now their table was often joined by other students who wanted to learn more about military life or share their own family connections to service. Mr. Patterson had started a Veterans Appreciation Club with Maya as the founding president. Most importantly, Maya no longer felt alone or ashamed of who she was. She had learned that courage wasn't about being fearless, it was about standing up for what mattered despite being afraid. The camouflage jacket she wore had become a symbol not just of her father's service, but of her own strength and the power of truth to change hearts and minds. When Miguel returned to Afghanistan 2 weeks later, Maya continued wearing his jacket with pride. But now she also wore something else, the confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. The girl who had once hidden in hallways now walked tall, secure in the knowledge that her family's service was something to be celebrated, not hidden. Lincoln High School had learned an important lesson about the cost of freedom and the families who pay it. And Maya Rodriguez had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply tell the truth about who you are and what you stand for, no matter who's listening.